Welcome, everyone. My name is Niki Lopez of Niki Lopez Creative, and you are watching The Circle, where every Tuesday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm sharing stories of the creative community, activists, social entrepreneurs, and people doing great things in the world today. So today I have a very special guest and friend, Richard Wright. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Nikki. Good to
Absolutely,
be here.
absolutely. And so Richard Wright is a multi-module artist, an activist, an author, and co-founder of Artists for Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
So, and for those of you joining us, we are live right now on Facebook at 2 locations. We're at Niki Lopez Creative. We are also on Outclick Magazine, and we're on YouTube and Periscope. So welcome, welcome everyone. So let's just dig right into it. So one of the things that I like, and you said, Richard Wright is a Jamaican New Yorker who lives in Florida, an educator, yes, author, activist, and multi-module artist.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple people popping in online. We have G. Wright saying greetings, and Kathleen saying hi. Thank you. So
hey,
let's start with some of the creative stuff. What is a multi-module artist? What's your definition of multi-module artist?
Well, so different modes of creativity. So I define a multimodal artist as someone that, you know, doesn't just express in one form. So I'm a visual artist. I write speculative fiction. I've DJ'd for over 30 years. Yeah, and the workshops that I do involve the arts as well, whether it's the mostly dramatic arts, but some movement as well. So just jumping into a lot of different arts and expressing myself in that way.
What's the difference between dramatic arts and the movement arts?
When I say dramatic arts, I'm thinking more about like improv, you know, even though there's improv movement as well, but like improv in terms of taking on characters and acting. It's definitely improv movement as well. But that's what I would say. The movement is more about not necessarily dance, but more about moving your body, and the dramatic arts are more about taking on a character.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And let me just cut really quick to a couple of comments. We have Deborah listening from Asheville. Thank you for being here. The wonderful Weta Wilburn. Thank you for being here. Jasmine Lewis.
Hey.
Jane Kramer.
Hey.
Trish, yes. Thank you for, and I know that one of the things that I know you do a lot of different art forms, but one of the things that I know you to do is a DJ. Can you give us a little background? Like, how did you get into DJing and what type of music that you focus on?
Yeah, wow. That goes back to 1985, Kingston, Jamaica. And me and my sister G's Sexy Exy, we started teaching ourselves to DJ. We got like a couple turntables and taught ourselves to DJ. And back then it was 80s dance hall and everything 80s. From Prince to freestyle. We weren't calling it freestyle, we were calling it disco. And just went from there. And later on, when we moved back to New York, I discovered house music, I discovered drum and bass, goth music, hip hop. I mean, I was there for the golden era of so many musics, like hip hop and house and dance hall. So I feel really lucky that was the time and era and age that I was DJing.
Awesome.
And G too, like G came up as a DJ and during the golden era of this music too. So yeah.
She said back then we called all American music disco.
Right. It's like you be in Jamaica, so you're gonna spin reggae, or you're going to spin disco,
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I also know that you're into Afrofuturism.
hmm
What is, for someone who does not know what that is, how do you define that?
I would say Afrofuturism is taking all of the folklore of the African diaspora, and legends and mythologies, and also um, science fiction and fantasy from a African diasporic lens. Um, but it's also a movement in terms of envisioning a future with Black people in it. Because even if you look at a lot of old school science fiction, you're like, I mean, if you're a fan of science fiction, you'll notice that Black people are missing from a lot of these things. And like, so, wow, that's a really amazing looking future, but I don't see any Black people.
Yeah.
So, are you envisioning a future without Black people? So, I would say that the shortest tagline is the movement of envisioning Black people in the future.
Awesome. Why do you think? Because I know you said talked a little bit about it. Like a lot of futuristic movies do not
hmm
include a lot of people
hmm
of color. Why do you think that's important to have like Afrofuturism or have that type of genre?
Uh, well, I like to share the story of Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura in the 1970s Star Trek series. She was the first actress to be on the screen that wasn't playing a slave, a servant,
Mm,
somebody hooked on drugs. She was on the helm of this starship, going exploring planets. She was a communicator. She communicated with different beings across the galaxy. And
mm-hmm,
there's a point where she was going to quit because she felt like, you know what, I feel like I'm just being typecast into this role, and I wanted to start doing other things. And the word got out that she was going to quit, and a big Trekkie called her personally and asked her not to quit, and that was Martin Luther King Jr. And he begged her, please do not quit, because through you we can see what we can possibly be.
mm-hmm,
Like these are things we do not see. We do not see ourselves being astronauts,
mm-hmm,
right? But we can actually see, wow, that's something I can think about doing. So please don't stop doing what you're doing. And she was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. And she went on to found um, an organization with NASA that allowed people of color and women to come aboard and literally become astronauts. And so she really did that in real life. So that's one example I like to give.
I love that example. I remember we did a workshop many years ago, and
That's
that
right.
stuck with me. Like
hmm
the power of sharing
hmm
and visibility. So I
Right.
really enjoyed that. And
hmm
so you're also a writer and an author. How did
hmm
you get into that? Have you always written?
hmm Well, I think since my name's Richard Wright, I think I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's just like you will be a writer. Um, but yeah, I've always really loved writing. Um, I've been published nonfiction, which we can get to later, but that's about my my activism work. I'm published in a book called Ask, Building Consent Culture, and I have a piece in there called I keep mixing the way up around, but it's revolutionary playtime, rehearsing consent culture, and I actually am published. An excerpt of my novel in progress is published in an ebook called Black Futurists Speak, and
Mhm.
that you can find that on Amazon. I often forget that it's there, but I'm working on my first novel, and an excerpt of it is online. Um, Black Futurists Speak, and I've been writing a lot of short stories lately. I've been very inspired by. I feel like we're like the Afro future is now Afro present. Like we're in a science fiction movie
Mhm.
right now.
Yeah.
So it's been very inspiring for me, and I've been doing a lot of writing.
Awesome. And can we get into a little bit because you mentioned a term that I don't feel a lot of people are familiar with.
What's that?
So, in reference to the book that you
Mhm.
wrote some parts about consent culture, what exactly
Right,
is consent culture?
right. So consent culture is the antithesis of rape culture. So I'm going to have to explain both. So rape culture was a term that came beforehand and is used to define what is basically a violent um, one attribute of patriarchy, and it normalizes sexual assault and all the behavior surrounding it. So from street harassment to um, blaming um, survivors of sexual assault for the assault, to um, just all the images that sexualize women, and to literal sexual assault, and the judicial system that does not favor people who have been sexually assaulted, and this culture of doubt, like, well, how do we know it really happened? Like a doubt that doesn't surround other crimes. Like when somebody said somebody stole my wallet, nobody's like, are you sure somebody stole your wallet? Like it's only around this.
Hmm.
So consent culture is about creating new norms to um, to replace those norms, to make it like something that your children grow up with, where they're like, oh, where you just it's where you honor your own boundaries and you honor the boundaries of others, and that's a natural thing, So that's and in the book, the chapter or the piece that I do is about literally rehearsing that with youth, and like playing through scenarios of, okay, if this is happening, how are you going to step into this scenario and make it right? And
Hmm.
yeah.
Awesome. And let me just take a couple of minutes. I
Mhm.
see Deborah said she shared it. Thank you. So, yes, if you're on this call live, if you're on live with us,
Mhm.
please consider sharing this out, getting some more people that may want to participate in this interview.
Yeah,
It's an interactive interview.
indeed.
Yes. And so we have G. She says, big up my brother, DJ and writer since the beginning of my memories. And yes, the name after the author Richard Wright.
True, true.
As well
Very
as
true.
consent culture is creating the new norm.
Yes.
So, how does that tie into? Because I also know you talk about toxic masculinity.
Hmm.
How does those things tie into it, and how do you share that with men and women?
Hmm. Yes. So toxic masculinity, um, also now being called unhealthy masculinity, is about um, kind of what is this kind of traditional masculinity, that the parts of it that are harmful and that are like encouraged by patriarchy, encouraged by sexism, um, and kind of like what kind of masculinities we see in the highest offices of the land, unfortunately. So um, just self-centered, lack of empathy, um, will abuse women and LGBTQ folks. Um, I mean, I could go on. Will not be accountable for their bad behavior. That's a big one. Will not share power. Wants to hoard power. You know. Yes, absolutely.
And do you think that shifting that culture impacts men as well? Because I know that would also that kind of empowers women, but how do you feel that impacts men? Because some men might feel like, well, no, I'm the macho man, I'm the alpha man, and
Hmm.
how do you feel that may impact, or maybe in a positive way?
Well, yes, it does impact. It impacts men as well, because on many levels. Like for me, um, like an anecdote I like to share is that when I was a teenager in Kingston, going to high school, and I remember standing in a circle of boys, and one of the boys talked about how there was he saw a gay homeless guy walking down the street, and he's like, "Someone something in the face," and it's like, okay, first of all, you're 13, you didn't punch anybody in the face, but all the boys laughed, and I just remember being the only boy that wasn't laughing, and it's like, so why is that funny? And the idea of bonding, that male bonding required denigrating LGBTQ people and women and girls, but just like there's got to be another way to be able to be a boy or be a man besides this, you know, and I think a lot of it started there, besides me and G also being brought up by amazing countercultural intellectual Jamaicans who were wanting us to bring us up in a gender neutral way. Like I saw my dad advocate for my sister for her to be on, you know, the school's football team, all these things that I wasn't seeing other dads doing, you know. So could you redirect me back to the question again? I've like gone
Well,
like
some of the positive impacts that that would have for men, but
um
with
what
just having learning about toxic masculinity,
oh okay, yes.
and
Oh yeah, okay, because I feel like for me it would it just freed me up from a lot of things because there's this idea that there are these it's like a tiny box of what makes you a man, and if you don't fulfill that, then you failed as a man somehow, and you can learn that's mythology. Like it doesn't, right? Like there's all these things that make you not a real man, and to be like, you know what, you can be a real man, and you can be gay, you can have disabilities, you can be nurturing, you can
Mhm,
you can be there are all these different ways you can still be masculine and healthy, and you know you can advocate for women, you can, you know, you can be trans masculine and be healthy masculine, you know.
mhm,
So all of these what we like to say counter stories to
mhm.
to the narrative of what a real man is. Hmm.
Okay. And for those of you who are following on Facebook, I've been putting in some links to some of Rich's work in the comment section. And we also had a little ticker go by. So if you want to get more information, definitely go to his website, richardwright.com. It's at the bottom. But I've been putting some of the links into the comment section to get
Hmm.
more information. And so I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of switch gears because I know there's
Hmm.
a lot of stuff, and I just, I love all the works that you're doing,
Hmm.
and it's very important. But you're also a co-founder of the Artists for Black Lives Matter collective.
Yes.
So I wanted to, if someone has never heard of that, how do you explain that collective, uh, or what is Artists for Black Lives Matter?
Sure. Before I jump into that, I just want to quick correction. So Richard M, like letter M, Wright.com.
Yes.
I need to make a distinction
Oh yes, Richard
from
M.
the from the Harlem Renaissance author, because I've been mistaken for him already.
Yes.
So,
So the ticker is correct. Correct. Richard M. Wright.
that's
.com.
right. Um, okay, so Artists for Black Lives Matter. Yes, so that came out of a space, um, a collective that came together. That's me, Niki Lopez, and Alison Kotzig, and how is Alana's name? Uh, these
Well, there's Alana de Casa, but I know she has another name that she also
right,
attaches with her name.
right, and Alana. So. Um, and it's in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's a it's an organization that um, that that allows people to express support for Black lives using the arts, and we've been using this particular format that of having people mail in these 12 by 12-inch cardboard pieces of art, and then we make installation where we make a wall of them, and it travels to different places. Um, and yeah, that particular formation is the brainchild of Alison Kotzig, and it's been really just it's a great way to have an installation and pick it up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
put it up and then put it up somewhere else. It's really great. Um, yeah, I mean that's this. When did we start this again?
Well, we started talking about it probably about 2015, but the
Right.
first exhibition was in 2016 in Miami.
Okay. Yes.
Mhm.
For Art Basel, representative
Yes,
for Art Basel. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And so, because I know a lot of people, when they hear Black Lives Matter,
Hmm.
some people want to counter it with all lives matter, or why do we need to say that? Why do you feel that we need to emphasize Black Lives Matter, or the collective has artists for Black Lives Matter? Why would you feel that that's important to make that distinction?
Hmm. Um, yeah. Well, I feel like racism and white supremacy in the United States is pretty unique in the sense that it's pretty virulent, and at the same time, there's a huge, huge pushback that it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's no racism, there's no white supremacy, and to the point where like literal Nazis are marching in the street with. I remember um, when they had like the tiki torch Nazis or the year or so ago, and they were marching and shouting. Um, and when they got identified and they started losing their jobs, there was one guy who was like on camera crying. He's, "I'm not a racist." I was like, okay, so clearly you guys want to do all the racist things and still be concerned about being considered a racist, and it's just ridiculous. And so Black Lives Matter because I mean, and literally the nation's on fire right now because Black families and Black people are being killed by the state for
Mm-hmm.
nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no kind of rationalization around it. Well, no, it's like murder by the state. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. And Kaepernick was kneeling quietly, you know, to protest it, and people didn't like that. And
Mm-hmm.
now the place is burning down. It's like, oh, you don't like that either? Well, it's not a popularity contest, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where we are now. We should have made some changes when it was just some quiet kneeling, but now here we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway, don't get me started. Um,
What do you say? Because sometimes I feel there's a challenge with
mm,
non-blacks or white people,
mm,
who might say, "Why can't we say all lives matter?"
mm,
Or they don't see, they don't feel we're living in a racist society, or they don't acknowledge systemic racism. What do you
right.
say to people like that has that type of mindset?
Well, I mean, it's entitlement and it's pure hypocrisy because if somebody was like if there is something where there's children um, who are fighting polio or something. I mean, polio doesn't really exist anymore, and you're just like, you know, um, children of polio matter. Like nobody's going to be like, what about people with measles and people with like nobody's going to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but for Black Lives Matter, all of a sudden, what about this? What about that? And it's just like it's not all about you. It can be about other people too. And nobody's saying that white people don't matter. We're just
Mm-hmm.
saying that Black people matter too. To be honest, when Black Lives Matter, when that slogan came out, I actually thought it was the most benign, kind of
Mm-hmm.
wishy-washy slogan. I was like, how about Black Power matters? But
Mm-hmm.
when I saw how such a simple, in my mind, like a non-offensive, very calm statement, Black people actually, we matter.
Mm-hmm.
We exist and we matter. That people, white racists, lost their minds. Black, what do you mean Black Lives Matter? It's like, yeah, it's just, we matter. We're not saying we're going to enslave you. We're just saying Black people matter, you know? So the last thing I'll say about it, all lives matter. That just, that's, we say Black Lives Matter because a house is on fire and we need that fire to be taken out. So
Mm-hmm.
if you say all houses matter when house is on fire and you're going to put water on all these houses that don't have a fire, then it's just ridiculousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Mm,
And so now there are some people, and I don't know if you've experienced it. There's a lot
mhm.
of people because of, what's happening in society right now,
Right.
with Ahmad and now
George
George
Floyd,
Floyd,
Breonna
and
Taylor.
yeah, so there's some people who may be non-black, they're white people who are saying, what can we do to help,
Right.
or say, or feeling like, because there are some people who feel like, well, I want to be able to help. What are some suggestions that people can do, if they're not black, or they don't feel like to want to support this or to want to work towards change?
Right. Um, wow, I would have come with some links, but there's like a lot of different places that people can donate to help bail out protesters, to donate money. The there's the George Floyd Memorial Foundation. You can Google that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are a bunch of other things that are going on where you can support the protesters, you can support the families. Um, yeah, you can just, you know, just check in on Black folks and
Yeah.
send us money, whatever. Just, I mean, there's just support, just listen and believe. Don't. Okay, the best thing you can do is don't dictate to Black people how we should um, gain our liberation. Just
Absolutely.
don't be like, it will be better. It's like, you know what? That's okay. I don't want to hear that from you. That's fine. You can
Mhm.
support me. You can support us. Please don't tell me how to liberate myself. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And so we actually have Artists for Black Lives Matter has an open call right now.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about, because there's the 12 by 12, people could submit artwork
Hmm.
about what does Black Lives Matter mean to them, positive Black images, Afrofuturism images, and anytime we have a display, they could become a part of that collection that we display. But we have a specific art, call for art right now, and I wanted to know if you could speak on it a little bit.
Right. Well, interestingly, when we started um, this talking about this call, um, we were more thinking about um, all the different ways that not only the pandemic of coronavirus is impacting mostly communities of color and Black folks, brown folks, indigenous folks. Um, um, but now it's like a whole other level. Now that we're in the streets and we're protesting all these atrocities that are being done and that we need justice for. So we had originally been like, hey, let's give people an outlet to express themselves creatively, and to be able to, send in a submission that we could put up about their experience. And since we're artists of Black Lives Matter, we definitely want to um, center Black experiences. So we're calling this um, the Pandemic Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
and so we're asking for other people of color, indigenous folks. Um, the Asian Pacific Islander community has also had a lot of impact from coronavirus. The people they've been beaten because people think that they are responsible for coronavirus and foolishness like that. And the Native American community has been really impacted. So we're asking for all people of color um, to send in a submission if they are inspired to do so. We're thinking about pushing the date back. Do we have a date on that yet, Nikki?
So the original deadline was June 8th, but
Hmm.
yeah, we're going to be pushing that back. But definitely people should look to get their submissions in. So the new deadline is probably going to be around the 15th, that week of the 15th in
Right.
June. And
Hmm.
we're going to do, because we're still practicing social distancing, and so the requirement is a 12 by 12 piece, but this will be a digital. We're going to do a virtual
Right.
display of those works.
Hmm. Right.
So, and I did put the call into the comment section. And I just want to take a couple minutes. So we had Michael saying greetings to Nikki and Richard, and
Hmm.
Shara Riggins, who Vanta Black, who's also an artist. She was agreeing with some of the things we were
Mm.
saying about Black Lives Matter.
Hmm.
She does a lot of work around that as well.
Yes.
And
First
Sarah
fascination. Hmm.
Warren Lane says, "Thank you for this education. I'm listening."
Mm.
Another artist, Connie, saying true words that drives me crazy when you a bit about some of the things. But it's kind of interesting because we have the Artists for Black Lives Matter where people are submitting that work, but then we wanted to do something focused on the pandemic. But
Hmm.
but ironically, unfortunately, they're still very intertwined, because one of the reasons why Black people, people of color, minorities are more impacted by the coronavirus goes back to these systemic racist practices that kind of pushes that, no access to health care, not getting the proper foods, all these things that makes or they're essential workers, so they're being more exposed. So it kind of just, even though they're meant to be a little shift, it's actually kind of really, you know um, the same, one and the same. How do you
Right.
separate it? you know
Hmm. Oh,
um,
another thing that I think white folks can do is really just do their work. Look up. Um, there are all of these workshops going on about confronting your whiteness, um, and complicity, because silence doesn't help anyone. So having those conversations with your families, about white privilege, white supremacy, and how to interrupt it. Not easy stuff by any means. I mean, I wouldn't know personally, but I've seen people, on that path, and it's tumultuous, but it's for your humanity and the humanity of everybody else.
mhm, mhm.
Hmm.
And I think that's what some people may not realize, that it does, breaking these systems of racial injustice doesn't just impact people of color, Black people. It impacts everyone.
Right.
So and so it's definitely some work to be done, and having conversations, and that's one of the beauty of the using art to bring that up, right? So it's not meant to
Right.
be an argument, it's not meant to be you did this or whatever. It's just meant to be space where people could share what comes up for them, and non-Black people could be able to take that in and take and educate themselves and figure out how to
Hmm.
support that and how to change these systems, because
Hmm.
it's not the system is broken, the system is working how it's supposed to work, but
Hey.
that system needs to change. So yeah, so um so I'm going to put in some, you have some DJ mixes on SoundCloud and
Hmm.
Mixcloud.
Yes.
I just put in some of the links. What are some of the musics that people could expect to find?
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. Well, there's one of my signature mixes is called Stimuli, and that's a very eclectic mix, from Alice Coltrane to Flying Lotus to Bjork to like hip hop and funk and house just roots reggae. It's all over and it flows. I mean, you have to listen to it to believe it that it actually flows. Um, but some of the other mixtures that I do are more like I have a series called Avantiardi, and that's kind of like um, definitely like comes from my Jamaican upbringing, but it takes it into these futuristic spaces and like this kind of diasporic space, like referencing dub and reggae and dancehall in different genres and countries. And so, yeah, they're fun. They're fun. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Um, if you had access to a time machine, where would you go? Past or the future, and why?
Oh, wow. Well, it's funny you say that because I mean I feel like nostalgia is so strong these days. Like just I mean nostalgia for just even a couple months ago when we could be outside hugging people, you know. So
BC, before Corona.
yeah, exactly. So so I've been feeling very pulled. It's even like when I just started DJing and it was so but as an Afrofuturist, I kind of want to you know have a curiosity about the future.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to just, can we get past the um, collapse of the United States and we've built new systems and can we just get to the new systems future?
Mhm.
Can we do that? You
Mhm.
know, and let's see, Native American folks have been reinstituted as the stewards of the land, and yeah, let's go to that future. I'd like to choose a future and go to it.
Mhm.
That's what I would like to do. Yes.
Nice, nice,
Mhm,
nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and
mhm,
sharing some of your work.
mhm,
I love how all of your work is really intertwined into,
mhm. Thank
it's
you.
not separate at all. The music, the activism,
Mhm,
the writing,
mhm,
the other artistic expression, they're all just kind of meshed into one. So,
mhm.
are you
Thank
working
you.
on any new projects?
Um, I've been writing some new stories, and I'm looking for places to publish them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually have I've been doing my own research, and I have um, who who know people who are going to get back to me. So because yeah, I just want to get this out there. It's very relevant to everything that's happening.
Absolutely. And we have
Mhm.
G saying, excellent interview,
Thank you.
especially special.
Especially special.
Yes, yes. And I want to give a quick shout out to Outclick Magazine. We're actually live on one of their platforms. So their June edition, they have did an interview on me, and I have an interview on page 50, I think. So if you are local to South Florida, definitely look for it and check it out, and you could find it online. So I'm really grateful. We're broadcasting live there as well. So we're on Niki Lopez Creative, and so that's the Ask. What's the name of the Ask Building Consent Culture?
Mhm.
And let me see if make sure I put that link in there. So Richard's book, Ask Building Consent Culture, edited by Kitty Stryker.
Yes, it's very
And
pretty. Yes.
okay, so we're going to put that link. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I don't know if those comments come through, but I'll definitely add them into it later. And for those of you who are online with us tonight, thank you for being here with us always. Definitely share this interview out. There's a lot of information. I mean, I feel like you could take any little piece of this interview and just
Mhm,
spend some time unpacking all the stuff that could come out of
mhm,
that. So
mhm,
I'm really grateful to have you online tonight.
mhm,
And so, for those of you who are online with us live, thank you for being here. For those
mhm,
who are watching it later, Thank you for watching it.
Mhm.
Do you have any final words?
Well, no, thank you for putting me on. Thank you, Nikki. I want to do a quick big up to Birth Bruja, um, at Birth Bruja, who put me on last week, and we did an amazing online workshop on healthy masculinity and consent culture, um, and I'm just glad to be here now. So, thank you, everyone who signed in, and yes, it has been especially special, like my sister said.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. All
Hmm.
right, guys. Well, I will catch you all next week, Tuesday,
Hmm.
8:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hmm. All
Good
right,
night.
thanks.
Mhm.